If you were to make a case to me saying this is why we should not use AI, what would that look like?
Yeah, so I think it has its challenges. So there's some push and some pull, right? So on the one hand, I think many decision makers in financial services know this technology is out there and feel some pressure to use it. On the other hand, the industry is rightly very heavily regulated and
Yep.
rightly very concerned with introducing methodologies that might be unfair and might have counterproductive effects.
Yep.
So I would say the typical reasons that we see for slower adoption are around that. So you hear lenders fairly concerned about regulatory compliance.
Hmm.
So, for example, in the US, it's mandatory that you're able to explain to an applicant why they did not get credit or they did not get as much credit as they applied for. And with these traditional models like a FICO score, it's very easy to do. You say, well, you got this many points because of your current balances. If you'd only had $100, then actually it would have been okay and we might have approved you. So this is what you can do to improve your score. So there is, I think, a reasonable concern, which is solvable, but a reasonable concern of
Yeah, yeah,
how do you reproduce that with an ML model, which might be much more complicated. Uh, the other typical concern is around fairness, right? So in part, just because these models are new, and in part because they are a little bit less simple and a little bit less easy to break down than the traditional approaches, often people will worry about if I put this new thing in production and start using it to make decisions, will I inadvertently introduce bias into my system, and how do I know that I'm not doing that? Right?
yeah.
And those, I think, are good reasons to proceed with humility and caution.
Mhm.
But I do also like to turn it around and say, well, okay, what's your case for not using AI
Yep.
right now? Because what's happening effectively is we are knowingly, by choice, making critical decisions that affect people's lives with models that are less accurate than they could be. So the reason to do that has to be quite good in order to justify that continued inaccuracy. And maybe to quantify that, when you look at the lift you can get from a machine learning based credit decision
Mhm.
algorithm over a generic
Rule based.
credit
Yeah.
score, which is typically available in the market, you could be looking at easily 5, 8, 10 points improvement um, in Gini or KS, which, just to translate that into real world terms, maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 times the traditional score is making the wrong decision and the ML score would have made the right decision. Right?
Mm.
And that's a lot of people who are getting the wrong call, who are being turned down for a credit
Sure.
card who shouldn't be. So yes, we need to be very careful about fairness. It's essential. In fact, we can't do it without. And yes, we need to make sure that what we do is explainable to the applicant, most importantly, and explainable to the regulator who's going to ask the question. But if we don't act, we've got to have a pretty good reason that we're going to tell our customers and we're going to tell our regulators why we're okay just making wrong calls all the time because it was too scary to embrace better technology, right? So that's I think the transition that financial services finds itself in right now, specifically in the space of consumer credit.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, it's a couple of things just to summarize, right? One is at a base level, since it's regulated industry, black box models and lack of explainability doesn't cut it. You have to be able to dial back, understand the provenance of how decisions are being made, what was used in the criteria, and then basically, if you're making decisions for people or making decisions on people's lives, you have to give them the path out of it. Like, I can't approve this credit, but here is what you can do to make it different.